Legends of Signum is a hex-based wargame with miniatures. Squads of creatures fight under the leadership of heroes. Players recruit characters, take advantage of spells and relics, and use cunning tactics. In Legends of Signum, players forge their own path to victory by collections of miniatures. The main goal of the game is to score more victory points, and this can be achieved in many ways. In the second part of the Legends of Signum 2 Warseer rules, significant changes have been made, and now players will immerse themselves in even more fast-paced and bloodthirsty battles. This game will be a great find for both new players and those familiar with the Signum universe. Let's take a closer look at the rules of the game. One of the fundamental changes implemented in Legends of Signum 2 is the introduction of a hexagonal grid. This significantly simplifies measuring movement and shooting distances, making the game more intuitive and organic. In Signum 2, there are two main decks of cards that players interact with: the battle deck, the feats deck, and terrain cards that contain information about the terrain's features. They are used as references and are not part of the game in its entirety. Additionally, there are hero, character, and minion cards, which do not belong to any of the decks and are used by players to gather information about creature attributes. The type of each card is indicated by an icon in the bottom left corner. Another significant game update is the introduction of new gaming dice. In the game, there are 3 ranks of dice: bronze, silver, and gold. They differ in the ratio of hits and misses on their faces. When a creature attacks or uses any ability, the player rolls a pool of dice indicated in the creature's attack field or next to the ability. Legends of Signum 2 Warseer includes several game modes, from solo play to 2 4-player matches. We recommend starting with a duel mode, player versus player, as it is the classic mode that fully reveals the game's potential. Before starting the game, hexes of terrain should be placed on the field according to the scenario or randomly. Afterward, both players select their faction and heroes. Heroes are the most important creatures on the battlefield. The health symbol indicates the number of wounds a creature can take before being destroyed. The movement symbol represents the maximum distance a creature can move on the battlefield during one turn. The attack range symbol shows the maximum distance from which a creature can launch an attack. The critical hit symbol signifies a critical hit against an opponent's creature, which means additional effects as specified on the creature's card. The leadership symbol indicates how many characters of which class a hero can lead into battle. This value is crucial when forming a squad. The dice for the attack symbol specifies which dice should be used when attacking another creature. The attack type is also mentioned next to the attack dice. The choice of a hero determines the faction of your squad and the combat deck you play with. Once you've decided on the faction and hero, players construct their battle decks. Each faction has a list of 20 common battle deck cards. Additionally, 10 faction-specific cards are added based on the hero's card list. Shuffle these cards to form a combat deck of 30 cards. Select characters from the faction in accordance with the hero's description. By assembling character card decks, players thus form their camp. Now, all combat units are available in your camp at the beginning of the game and can be brought onto the battlefield as needed. Rolling dice is now the responsibility of the attacking player only. This change removes an element that many considered unnecessary and significantly streamlines the gameplay. The primary game resource is prosperity. To play a support card or summon a character, a player must pay the card's cost in prosperity. At the beginning of each turn, a player receives an amount of prosperity equal to their income value. The more cards you play, the higher your income level becomes. It is always equal to the sum of the income values of cards in your Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame is the zone for played spell cards, characters that have been eliminated on the battlefield, destroyed relics, buildings, and activated tactics. This is a public zone, and players can look at the cards they have in the Hall of Fame at any time. As soon as a card goes to the Hall of Fame, adjust your income level accordingly. The income level can be increased up to 15, but prosperity can only be obtained up to 10. Before the game begins, Place your deck on the table, set the victory point and income counters to 0. The first player receives 2 prosperity, and the second player receives 3 prosperity. At the start of the game, both players draw 4 cards from the battle deck and may return any number of cards to the deck and draw again. The game consists of a series of turns that participants take one after the other. A turn comprises 3 mandatory phases: beginning phase, creature activation phase, end of turn phase. The first player places their hero miniature on the battlefield in the deployment zone. The second player does the same. The first player draws a card from the combat deck. Tactic cards allow players to use tactical maneuvers that come into play during the game event specified on the card. Afterward, the player draws a card from the feats deck. It's worth noting that a player can have no more than 5 feats cards in hand, and if they have more, they must discard the excess feats cards. The feats deck is a common game item for all players. These cards are used to earn and tally victory points. The player discards a feats deck card and gains 2 prosperity. The total number of your creatures on the battlefield cannot exceed 7, including the hero. The player deploys their first character to support their hero. Each creature in the game has a rank. The hero's leadership stats indicate how many and what rank of characters can be placed in your camp. The player deploys the character Sir Daramain on the battlefield and spends 4 prosperity. Like heroes, all creatures have health and movement values. The attack block contains the number and rank of dice a player rolls when declaring an attack with the creature, the maximum range if it's a ranged attack, at which the target creature must be located, and the effect triggered on a critical hit. The player activates their hero and moves them to a more advantageous position on the hill. Thus, when a creature attacks, it can increase any of its dice by 1 rank 1 time, bronze dice to silver or silver to gold, and can conduct a line of sight through friendly units, which means that friendly characters do not interfere with his attack on the enemy. The second player starts their turn and draws a card from their combat deck and a card from the feats deck. The player declares the activation of their hero and moves them to another hex. The player uses a spell card. The spell's effect takes place immediately after the card is played. To use a spell card, the player spends a specified number of prosperity, and then the effect described on the card is applied. A minion is summoned into contact with the hero. Minions are also one of the types of creatures, but minions can only be summoned by the abilities of other cards. You can summon any number of identical minions. Each minion is a separate creature with its own bonuses, penalties, and tokens. The summoned minion can be activated immediately. After the spell card is used, it goes to the Hall of Fame, and the player receives income. Next, the player discards 1 feats card and receives 2 prosperity. After discarding the card, the player has enough income to construct a shooting range. The player places the shooting range card and pays for its construction. This concludes this player's turn. The short rules overview is now complete, where we've covered the most fundamental aspects of the game mechanics. To familiarize yourself with the full game rules, you can download the electronic rulebook from our Kickstarter campaign or our website. Our Kickstarter campaign for Legends of Signum Warseer is still ongoing, so don't miss the opportunity to become a part of it.